Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome our third plenary speaker. He's a professor in operation research at University of Amsterdam. So he's a well-known figure in the optimization community due to his work in robust optimization. And I still remember the first time I met him was at the workshop of robust optimization organized by IPAM at UCLA more than 10 years ago. His research includes prescriptive analytics and more recently, optimization with machine learning. He's the Science to Impact Director of the Analytics for a Better World Institute, which focuses on application for better society. And he just told me last night, he was one of the only two people who received the prestigious INFORMS Franz Edelman Award twice. For him, the first one is in 2013 for his work in optimal flood protection for the Netherlands. And more recently, the second one is in 2021 for his work in optimizing the food supply chain for UN World Food Program, which he's going to tell us more in his talk today, together with his other work with World Bank. So on that note, please join me to welcome Professor Dick den Hertog. And Dick, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Thanks a lot for the kind introduction. Thanks also for inviting me to give this presentation. So can you hear me? Yeah? So show your emotions during this talk. Okay, so the title is Analytics for the Better World, and I think it fits very well with the theme of this conference. And this research is really close to my heart. So half of my time I spent more on theoretical research, and half of my time I spent on Analytics for the Better World, where we try to apply analytics, and in particular today I will talk about optimization, to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And in fact, I will start with 3 books that influenced me a lot to do this work. So this work, again, is close to my heart. There were 3 books that inspired me a lot. The first book is Excellence Without a Soul, written by a former dean of Harvard. And in the book, he's claiming that we should challenge especially the young people, the students, more on purpose and meaning. And so I decided to start more societal relevant projects and also to include those in my teaching. The second book that influenced me a lot is Weapons of Mass Destruction. So I think it's a good book, but it's only one side of the coin, I would say. It's only about the disadvantages and the dark side of data science and analytics. And so I decided to also concentrate on the bright side, on the positive side. And therefore, I decided to start Analytics for the Better World. And also that term, I coined that after reading this book. In this book, they use WMD. So I thought, well, let we use ABW as a positive counterpart of WMD. The third book is Factfulness. Have you heard about this book or maybe read this book? Yeah? Okay, yeah. So that's in fact, the title is saying that 10 reasons we are wrong about the world and why things are better than you think. And I think, that also gives me a lot of positive energy to really contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals because it really helps. Also, this researcher, Dimitri Betsimas, we talked a lot together, and we started what we called the ABW movement several years ago. And since January, we started an institute. Maybe at the end of my talk, I will spend some words about this institute. So it's about analytics, using analytics for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I think you all know what those goals are, so no need to mention them all. So the content of my talk is now the following. So first I would like to treat two cases in which I think analytics has a really high impact, or more precisely, optimization. The first one is about optimizing the food supply chain, and that is for the World Food Programme. So that has to do with the second SDG, Zero Hunger. And the second project is about optimizing hospital locations in Timor-Leste, in Vietnam, Nepal, and in other countries. So that's together with the World Bank. And then finally, I would like to spend a few words on the ABW Institute. Okay, so let me start with the food supply chain of the World Food Programme. So Finn already mentioned the Edelman Award, and this is the team that won the Edelman Award in 2021. Because using the model that we developed, the optimization model, the World Food Programme is using that in every new operation, and because of that, millions more people can be fed. And I'll explain how. So this is the team. I would also like to mention Hein Fleuren, my colleague at that time. He was the project leader of that project. And so all credits go to him. So let me start with an introduction for the World Food Programme. So this is the hunger map in 2020. So here, the color indicates, in fact, the percentage of the people, of the population, that are in hunger. And so, for example, the green color, less than 5%. The orange one, between 15 and 25%. So typically, you see here the countries that where the hunger is, where there is hunger. Okay, the point is there is enough food in the world. We only have a transportation problem, or maybe a money problem. And the World Food Programme is supporting 10% of those 820 million people that are in hunger. So they are helping 80 million people every year. And they ship 4 million tons every year. How much is that? Well, my colleague Hein Fleuren is always saying the following. Suppose that you have a line of trucks from Amsterdam, where my university is, to Rome, the headquarters of the World Food Programme, and then back to Amsterdam, and then again to Rome. One big line with trucks, and those trucks are full of food. That's the amount of food that is transported by the World Food Programme. So that's really a huge operation. I also have an alternative for the people from the United States, because they don't know the distances in Europe. So the same for Boston to Chicago. 3 times. By the way, what do you think? How much does it cost to feed one person on the average, that is say in Africa, for the World Food Programme, per day? One person, one day. How much does it cost? Guesses?
2 euros.
2 euros. $1. $1. Half a dollar. Less than 40 dollar cents. If you multiply 40 dollar cents by 820 million, if you multiply that by 365 days, the costs are then $120 billion a year. It's a lot, but you know, it's only 0.3% of the GDP of Europe and United States, including UK. So, yeah, for me it's really a surprise that, why can't we solve that problem? Okay, so now I would like to show you a few minutes to introduce the logistics of the World Food Programme and that's a video that we made for the INFORMS Edelman Award.
In 2019, nearly 690 million people regularly went to bed hungry. 1 in 11 people did not have access to enough food. 2 billion people cannot afford a nutritious diet. Today, because of COVID, these figures are even higher. Conflict, climate change, and COVID-19 have created the greatest humanitarian challenge since the Second World War. A record 235 million people will need humanitarian assistance and protection in 2021, a near 40% increase on 2020, which is almost entirely due to the compounding effects of COVID-19. One of the agencies responding to these humanitarian needs is the United Nations World Food Programme, WFP. When it comes to delivering food assistance in emergencies, improving nutrition and building resilience in communities, WFP leads the way, saving lives and changing lives. For its efforts to combat hunger, for its contribution to bettering conditions for peace in conflict-affected areas, and for acting as a driving force in efforts to prevent the use of hunger as a weapon of war and conflict, WFP was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2020. To assist nearly 100 million people in over 80 countries, WFP operates over 5,000 trucks, 30 ships, and nearly 100 planes every day, delivering food and other assistance to those in most need, wherever they are. In 2020, WFP transferred more than 4 million metric tons of food and $2 billion in cash-based transfers to beneficiaries.
Okay. So in fact, the core elements of the model is the following. So the core decisions in this, for this problem, for the food supply chain, for the World Food Programme, are the following. So first of all, suppose that there is hunger in Syria. That's one of the first projects that we did. Then the question is, what should be the food basket? What should be the daily meal, the ration? What should be included? Should it be rice, and how much? Oil, how much? Beans, or how much? And so on. It should be such that all kinds of nutritional requirements are satisfied. And so, for example, so much vitamin, so much protein, and so on. So this is really a classical diet problem that we learn our first-year students. But the second element is that you have to purchase those ingredients somewhere in the world. And so you would like to minimize the total cost of purchasing cost and transportation cost. And because sometimes it's cheap, but if it's far away and there are a lot of high costs for transportation, then that's maybe also not the best way to do. So in fact, it is one problem combined. It consists of the diet problem and a multi-commodity min-cost flow. So basically, what we developed is a rather simple, I would say, linear optimization problem with a big impact. So those are the two elements. So for example, in Syria, here you see the beneficiary camps at that time. And the question is, what should be the food basket? And where to purchase it? That's how I also indicated here these locations, but you know, the ingredients are also purchased somewhere in Europe or in United States, or, and then it is transported to the harbors close by, and then it is transported to the warehouses. From the warehouses, it's transported to the beneficiary camps. So the question is, what should be the food basket? Where to purchase those ingredients? How to transport it? And finally, that's one big linear optimization model. And the core of the model fits on one slide. I think it's nice to go through this notation and just to show you the basic model. And so we have some sets of nodes for suppliers, for the ports, for the warehouses, for the beneficiary camps, for the commodities, the ingredients, and a set of nutrients, so protein, vitamin, and so on. We have the number of beneficiaries at the beneficiary camp I. We have handling cost, we have purchasing cost, transportation cost, we have nutritional requirements, so much vitamin, so much protein, and so on. And we do know what the nutritional content is of all the ingredients. So how much vitamin does 1 kilogram beans contain? And then the variables are just the flow variables. So the flow in kilogram from node I to j of commodity of ingredient k. And so, for example, the amount of beans flowing from I to j. And rk is the ration size. So how much kilogram of each ingredient. Well, this is then the basic model. Of course, there are some extensions, but this is the basic model. So we minimize. Here are the purchasing costs, the transportation cost, the handling cost. We have balance equations per commodity, of course, because beans cannot transfer it into oil or the other way around. So we have per commodity, we have balance equations. All beneficiaries should receive a food basket. So the total flow that comes into a beneficiary camp should be at least the number of people there times what is needed in the food basket. And finally, the nutritional requirements should be satisfied. That's the core of the model. So I think this already you can, and that's also what we do. We use it already in the first course on optimization. We use this example for the students. Of course, there are some extensions. So it's multi-period. You have to take seasonality into account, different beneficiary types. For example, adults or pregnant women and children. So there are many other extensions, but basically that is the core model that we use, and that is used now in every new operation. Palatability restrictions. Of course, the mix of ingredients should also be such that it is palatable. And so we have some restrictions for that. And also some restrictions to include that for international and regional and the local market. So there are some extensions, but basically that's the model that I showed you. So we built a software package for that called Optimise, and that's now used in every new operation. A lot of data that is used on the shipping, the transportation costs, and so on. It goes into the optimization engine, and then finally you get an optimal plan. Okay, so let's now look at some of the first applications. So we first applied it to Iraq in 2015. It was a small case, and we showed there that we were able to find a plan that has 70% lower cost and the same nutritional value as the plan that the planners found. So that basically means if you save cost, you have more money to help more people. So in fact, in this case, 85,000 more people. The same in Syria. Even there, the savings were higher, 26%, and that means that, in fact, 1 million more people could be fed there. And again, you know, it's now used in every new operation. So this is another one in Africa, and here you see the sourcing strategy. So Nutri-Butter from the European Union and other ingredients from other parts of the world. I would like to now also show 2 minutes of this video.
By determining and implementing an optimal corridor allocation.
Air deliveries cost up to 7 times as much as road or river deliveries. We therefore use airdrops only as a last resort when security or poor infrastructure hinder our access. Using the data and visibility approach described by my colleague earlier, we combine various data sets, including geospatial data, road networks and the usability throughout different seasons, weather patterns, food assistance requirements, population movements, security and access constraints, and river navigability. We then analyze this data, visualize it to facilitate discussion, and determine the operational plan that tells us the timing, the quantity, the commodity, the delivery modality, and the location. This innovative approach not only ensures that our beneficiaries receive a full food basket without delays throughout the year, even when the commercial sector stops, but has also halved airdrops since 2018. Given the operational plan for downstream deliveries, we determine the optimal upstream plan. To do this, we use optimise. We feed it with food requirements from the downstream operational plan, supply chain costs, food supply availability, and donor constraints, amongst others. From this, we derive the optimal sourcing and delivery plan that helps us understand how much food has to be bought, where and when, and the corridors we will use to deliver. In conclusion, here in South Sudan, analytics help us to improve our operations and better help the people we serve. It has enabled us save lives, save costs, open up new transport options, and engage better with our donors.
Okay. So this is in fact the application in South Sudan. So these are the 2 papers that we wrote about this project, and if you are interested in the full video, there is the link to the video. Before I go to the second topic, I would like to give you the opportunity to ask questions, because listening 1 hour is really boring. So other questions about, yes? I think there's a microphone, yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi there. Yeah, I noticed you had some really quite nice graphics on the package that you'd put together. Did you put those graphics in there, or were they something that you ported your solution onto?
Graphics, you mean?
Yeah, things like that. You had the Sankey diagram and things like that.
Yes, yeah, that's true. So I didn't show you, but a lot of graphics, of course, in the tool. Yeah, I concentrated here more on the mathematics, the tool. Yeah.
Thank you for that presentation. That was fabulous. Thank you. In your analysis, did you also consider the other NGOs that are delivering food and doing humanitarian assistance?
No, so in fact, WFP is working together with other NGOs. And so when they're working together, it's also included in the project, of course. Yeah. But that's a point, you know, that maybe they should work more together, I think. And maybe there's also some room for improvement there. Yeah. But basically, it's for the World Food Programme. This is for the World Food Programme. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I have a question about your model. So you actually minimized the total cost, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, would you also thinking about to, at the same time, maximize the coverage of the people or coverage of the household that you can provide them with the food?
Yeah, so in fact, the budget is very restricted. So you do have a certain amount of money, and then you know you do know more or less how many people you can serve. So in fact, what we do is the other way around. And if we save some money, we can of course also help more other beneficiary camps. So the first choice is made by the World Food Programme. Which beneficiary camps or which countries do we help? Does it answer your question?
Yeah,
Yeah?
thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. It looked like some of the inputs, like the price of food at the various nodes, they were exogenous. What happens if? How big is the program? Does it actually? Are there any dependencies? Does it impact potentially the cost of what you purchase, given the size of the program, and how do you feed that back into the model if that's an endogenous factor?
I don't think if I understand. So, can you repeat your question? Sorry.
Yes. So it's, from what you explained, one of the inputs was the price.
Yeah.
To optimize the price of the commodities that you were purchasing
Yeah.
at the various nodes. But it's a really large program, and it looked like there were often only a few nodes. So what happens if the size of the purchase program is big enough to actually change those market prices?
So
how does that
indeed,
feedback in?
yeah, your question is about are the costs really linear? And maybe, yeah, you get some reduction if you have... but exactly because of the reason that you were mentioning, namely this really large project, those costs are really fixed already because it's already large scale. So I think the assumption of linearity is here correct in that sense.
One question just on the impact of what you got there. Really impressive. Love what you're doing. The options you were showing there was showing massive savings or significant numbers of increased people being fed. But they were the optimum answers, and stuff happens. So do you know actually how many extra people you did feed because of this, or how much money was saved, rather than just a mathematical limit, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so in fact, when I'm saying about, let's say, the savings, is it really comparing also with the first project, just the planners did it as they were normally doing that, and we compared it with that, and it gave us, let us say, an estimate of the cost saving. But, you know, that was also the realization, because those were really the cost. And so there's not much between the realization and the plan, because those costs are also on contracts.
Are we assuming that all the food that is delivered is going to be consumed, or are we also taking into account that some of that food needs to be reallocated and not wasted somehow? Yeah, so in fact, not wasted, yeah, that's a matter of knowing how many beneficiaries there are in those camps. And normally speaking, so in the model we don't take into account possible errors in the data. So the answer is no, but I think that is not a big issue. But what the issue is namely the uncertainty in parameters like costs, because the purchasing costs are really volatile. So what you also did, but I didn't talk about that, we also included robust optimization for that, as you could expect from me. Yeah. And then I think I go to the second part.
Hi. There's a kind of thing that happens often in these sort of situations where on one implementation there's something that turned out to be important that wasn't included in the model, and it meant something goes a bit wrong, and then you get a cascade of people being like, oh no, maths isn't actually good, we should just randomly allocate things by vibes. And that's always very annoying. But there's a very small point, there's often kind of a point buried in there, I think, which is that sometimes you have to make sure that your solution is reasonably robust to things you hadn't considered, and obviously you can't explicitly consider things you haven't considered because you don't know what they are. But do you do anything like randomly permuting little bits or introducing random variation to see if your solution is really fragile to small changes? Yeah, so that's in fact what we did with robust optimization and also robustness analysis to look how, not that much, so how the optimal solution changes if
you have another, let's say, cost and so on, but more on how robust is the current solution. And then also how to find a solution that is robust against uncertainty in the model. So that's exactly the robust optimization that we used for that. But I have to admit, you know, that is rather recently, and that has not been introduced yet in their algorithm, the software. Because it's more advanced, so it also takes time for them to understand it. So the real robust optimization technology is still not included there. Okay, I would like to go to the second part. Let me look, what is the time? Okay, yeah. The second part is about the third SDG, good health and well-being. That's together with the World Bank, and that's more recent, and it's about optimizing healthcare facilities such to optimize the healthcare accessibility, geospatial accessibility. And we started in Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste, no, first the team. So this is the team who is working on it. So some people from the World Bank, from my university, and also from my previous university, Tilburg University. So we first applied it to Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste is a small country close to Indonesia. Timor means east, Leste means east, so it is east-east. It became independent in 2002, and it's a poor country. And the World Bank was also helping them to improve the healthcare infrastructure, hospital locations, not hospitals as we think, but you know, it's more medical centers for the first primary healthcare. And the idea there is, okay, we should improve the accessibility to these centers. And that was the purpose of this project, because it's really important to have accessibility of healthcare close by. There are many studies that shows that that is very important. And in fact, in Timor-Leste, 1/4 of the households are more than 2 hours walk from their nearest primary facility. So here you see some infrastructure, the roads there. You know, it's not that what we used to have. Okay, so basically this is the problem. Here you see the locations of the current locations of the healthcare facilities. And the goal is, and that's also one of the United Nations goal, is to have, let us say, 95% of the people, the population, that they have access to such a healthcare facility within 5 kilometers distance. So the first question is, what is the percentage of the population that has access to a hospital within 5 kilometers? And then secondly, where to place additional healthcare facilities, hospitals, such that we can reach the 95%. Well, in fact, you know, this is a facility location problem, and that's also how we approached this. So a lot of data that we used there, data on the facilities, the current facilities, data on the road network, and that's also, it was very difficult because there was not a full digital road network there, only partial. There were in fact 2 digital road networks, and they were overlapping, but not the same. So the first what we did is we combined those 2 in a richer and a better digital road network. Information, data on the population, and other data that we used. So here you see a picture of the 2 digital road maps, OpenStreetMap and Istrada, that we combined. You know, that was not an easy task, by the way, but we developed a method for that, and now we can use that also for other purposes in other countries. Okay, so I think I skip this. So basically, technically speaking, from an optimization point of view, what we used there, but we're just starting, and we are building a toolbox and also apply it now to other countries
So we are also extending our models. But basically, we started with this. It's an uncapacitated facility location model. We used a mixed integer linear optimization model for that. And in Timor-Leste, we had 15,000 possible locations and 40,000 household combinations. And so we clustered households to 40,000 clusters. And we used Kurobi, and it took 1 minute to solve that. So that was fine. So later we will see that for larger countries, as for example Vietnam, this is not possible anymore, so we have to use a heuristic. But for Timor-Leste, it's relatively a small country, and we were able to do that. Okay, so I think the model is very simple and was already proposed in the 70s. So we have an index set for the households, clusters of households. We have an index set for the existing hospital sites and also for potential locations for the hospitals. We have the number of people in the household or the cluster of households I, the travel distance between household I and facility J, the maximum distance S, and P is the number of additional hospitals. And we simply have variables xj is 1 if the hospital is opened and 0 otherwise. And zi is whether household I is served by at least 1 hospital. So it's important here that you know we have variables with only 1 index. So that's the trick, because this is 10,000 and, 50,000 and 40,000. So we have to avoid that we have variables I times j, so that we have 50,000 times 40,000 variables. So here we only have indices j and I. So this is the model. It's already an old model from 1974. So we maximize the total number of people that are covered by the hospitals. The existing ones are already opened. At most, P hospitals can be added. And this is the constraint that says that a household is connected if at least one of the facilities closer than S kilometers is opened. That's it. So we were using these models to find solutions for Timor-Leste. So here you see an example. It's one of the districts, Mera. Here you see the existing hospitals, the green ones. And in that district, 63% of the households are within 5 kilometers of a health facility. And for example, if you add then 10 facilities extra, then you get an accessibility rise from 63% to 81%. But of course, these type of curves are very interesting. So what you see here on the horizontal axis is the total number of hospitals, and on the vertical axis, the coverage. And so the blue one is the existing situation, so 139 facilities. And here you see if you add extra hospitals, you'll see what then the coverage is. So each dot is an optimization run. And we also did, just also for fun, to show, suppose that you had a greenfield situation, so we could start just with neglecting all the 139 existing facilities, what would be then the curve? And then you see that you already have 61% if you have 16 facilities. Of course, yeah, what can you do with that? Maybe not that much, but okay. Okay, so we did that for Timor-Leste. Here you see that the results were discussed and with the local people there responsible for the implementation. We wrote an expenditure review. So it's still under discussion with the government and the World Bank. recently we were asked to do some extra scenarios for them. So finally, what the real impact is, we have to wait for that. But we are confident that finally these results will be used. Although the direct impact, as for example for the World Food Programme, is maybe less clear here. So I would like to thank our sponsor. So Kurobi is the sponsor of this project, but also for ABW Institute. So they give Kurobi license for free. So we started in Timor-Leste, but now we're also doing that in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, it's about stroke centers. So this is Vietnam. For those who do not know where Vietnam is. By the way, there is a city called after you. I saw, yeah. Okay, and so here it is about stroke centers. And it appears that stroke is cause number 1 of death in Vietnam. So it's really very important to have stroke centers close to the population. So in fact, that's a similar problem as in Timor-Leste. And we try to optimize additional locations for stroke centers such that the coverage of the people is as much as possible. So here you see the north of the country, and the blue ones are the existing stroke centers. And the color is the intensity of the population. So you see here that indeed in where many people are living, we have stroke centers. There's another part of the country. So that's again the problem that we solved here. We have to locate new facilities in such a way that the number of people that's covered is maximized. And we say that the population point is covered if it lies within distance S from a stroke center. And let us say we can add at most P facilities. We have a grid of potential locations for the stroke centers. And we have to solve it for different values of capital S and P. Okay, so here you see in fact a grid on different levels, 10 kilometer, 5 kilometer, and 1 kilometer. The aim was really to solve it for the 1 kilometer grid. Also because, you know, the next country is even bigger, so we wanted to have technology to solve it on this 1 kilometer grid. Okay, here the problem is bigger. So the number of facility locations is 350,000, and the number of population points or clusters of population is 300,000. Already calculating the distance matrix is a problem here. Because the distance matrix is 350,000 times 300,000. Of course, it's not completely, you can leave out many entries, but still, you know, that's a big problem to calculate it, because you need a shortest path method for each entry of that matrix. So Kurobi was not able to solve it in time. You know, it even was not able to, with memory issues, but also for smaller cases, it took too much time to solve this problem. So we decided to develop a heuristic for this. Let me see what the time is. Yeah. So I think I'll skip this. So we built a heuristic together with students, and that heuristic is now also part of the toolbox that we built. It's called the geospatial toolbox. We are extending the toolbox with more methods and more cases to cover, and also apply it to other countries. So I think I will skip this heuristic. Here you see the result of the heuristic. So in fact, the blue ones are the existing locations. The orange ones are the facility that occur both, because if we do it on a 5-kilometer grid, we were able to solve it also optimally with the mixed integer solver. So here you see the comparison between the two solutions. So the orange ones occur in both solutions, and the green one only in the heuristic, and the red one only in the optimal solution. But the deviation is very small, 0.025%. So what we also did is we compared the results when we do it on a grid, 1-kilometer grid, with the heuristic, and the 5-kilometer grid, where we can use the solver. And here you see the coverage, and here the number of facilities. And so, for example, for 60 additional stroke centers with the 5-kilometer grid, we found a solution with this amount of objective. So much of the population could be covered. When we do it the heuristic on the 1-kilometer grid, we could improve that by 1%. And that is nothing to laugh about it, because 1% means almost 1 million people. Because Vietnam has 97 million, the population 97 million. Okay, so that means that it gives us some trust in the heuristic. Of course, we don't have proofs that we are close to the optimal solution, but at least these type of calculations gives us some trust. Okay, so we extended that also to take flood resiliency into account. We extended that also in Vietnam to look at more the capacitated version, but I think there's no time to go into that. We applied the same techniques and the same toolbox for COVID test centers in Nepal, the locations of COVID test centers, and also for hospitals in Armenia. And 2 weeks ago, we were also asked to do a similar project with the Red Cross in Ukraine. And there it is more about mobile clinic centers. So we built a toolbox. It's called the Geospatial Planning and Budgeting Platform, full of course, mathematics, but also full of all kinds of interactive technology where you can interact and see the map and zoom in into the location and so on. Okay, so that is the second project. And finally, I would like to spend a few minutes on the ABW Institute that we initiated early this year. So it's a joint initiative with University of Amsterdam and Ortec. Ortec is a company, an operation research company in the Netherlands, a big company, I think more than 1,000 employees, and they are sponsoring this institute. And also MIT is involved, and especially Dimitri Bertsimas. So for those who are interested, this is the website, www.analyticsbetterworld.org. Okay, so the vision is the following. So analytics plays an important role for companies. But the same role, and even better role, analytics can play for the NGOs, for the Sustainable Development Goals. And that is what we would like to do. So the aim is to apply analytics to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. I already showed it before. So we do several things. So first of all, projects, of course. And I explained already 2 of them. We also have an academy. So we also train people from NGOs in analytics to make them more data mature, such that we will become redundant in the future and that they can do it themselves. For example, at World Food Programme, they also have their own team now of 12 people who are doing these type of analytics. So Academy, we organize meetups where we present high impact projects. We do research, and we're going to set up a journal on it. And a repository, so methods and tools that are used and useful in a certain project, we put it also on the web, such that it can also be used by other NGOs and in other applications. So that's the ABW Institute. So we are working together with AMREF, the World Bank, WHO, the Red Cross, the World Food Programme, but also the ocean cleanup. And I think, first of all, the formula of the structure of the institute is such that also other companies can join. So if they are willing to sponsor, not only in money, but also in hours. So for example, DHL will become such a partner. So they sponsor many hours to really help us in those projects. So if you are willing to do that, then you're welcome. I can't resist the temptation to show you in 2 slides results of a project that I'm doing currently. That's for the ocean cleanup. There's a company in the Netherlands that tries to remove the plastic from the oceans, the plastic soup. And here you see the system they are using. So this is, these are tugboats. And so they are collecting the plastic. And the plastic goes then here in this retention. And the question is how to steer the boats, the system, in such a way that we collect the maximal amount of plastic given a certain amount of time. They have predictions about the plastic density on several locations of the oceans. So the question is how to steer the boats such that we collect the most plastic. So here you see, these are kilometers, a part of one of the oceans. The color indicates the prediction of the plastic density. So the red ones are really high density. And you know the time is running, and then also the plastic is moving. And then this is one of the optimal paths, given the fact that the predictions are correct. So the next stage now is to also use robust optimization, taking into account uncertainties in the prediction of the plastic density. And so here you see the optimal path. It's cool, isn't it? I showed it to my wife, but she said, okay. Okay. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Rick, for the inspirational talk. So it's open for question now.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm very proud to see the partnership between Analytics for a Better World and DPDHL, because that was stimulated by a practitioner forum meeting last year. So just to plug practitioner forum. We all know that there's a big leap that goes from having your model working on the computer to actually having it working in the real world.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so impressive about the World Food Programme, and I love the ocean cleanup. It seems to me that the hospital facility location problem is of a different nature, just because of the time it takes to build hospitals.
Yeah.
And the chance that things have changed in the meantime.
Yeah.
And also that you have your optimal solution is for when they've all been built. Have you looked at optimizing the next one to build, as opposed to the entire pattern?
Yeah, yeah, very good question. Yeah, so of course I showed you, let's say more or less the mathematics, but it's much more and even much more time
goes to, let us say, talking to those people and getting it implemented. And so that's indeed true. And that's also why we always work together with parties like the World Bank, the World Food Programme, and so on, and not directly with the governments or, let us say, the people that are in hunger. Okay, and also if you look at the different projects, then the last one is much more operational. The first one is also more operational, I would say. The second one, about the facility location, it's much more strategic. It takes much more time. So as I said, up to now, I don't know exactly what will happen. Indeed, oh yeah, that was your question. The question was, now I go back. Yeah, here. So if you look, let us say this curve, if you add 1 or if you add 2, then the 2 that are added may be different than the first one that you add. So that was, I think, your question. So
if you were told you could only do 5,
yeah.
the same 5.
Yeah, if you were, for example, told you can only do the first 10, let us say, then in fact, what you can do is the following, and that's also what they are going to do. So you look up what are the best 10, and then you start with one of those 10. Then you optimize, take the one that gives the biggest increase. Or if you're, in fact, if you are going to implement 2, you look for the 2 that's a problem, optimization problem in itself, maybe, yeah.
Hi, thanks for the talk. Practically, you can't just put the hospitals anywhere. You've surely got to put them near major road networks and also major cities to allow the workforce to staff these facilities. So is that taken into account?
The staffing?
Yeah, well, proximity to cities and road networks. You can't just put these anywhere, regardless, even if it does maximize the objective function in terms of distance to population.
Yeah.
Practically, they've got to be by road networks, transport networks, and also cities that can supply the workforce to these hospitals.
Yeah. So, so we only looked at the distance. So basically, up to now, so if you look at, for example, Timor-Leste, the way it's really by walking. So that's what we took into account. So not the transportation systems, for example, no. But it's certainly, so we are building a toolbox, and with every new application that we get now, we have additional characteristics and additional items that we would like to add. So capacitated is one, but also this is one.
Hello. Yeah, no, I was just wondering, sort of like in that first graph you showed of the hospital locations, there was sort of like quite a big area that had people traveling a lot further than 5 kilometers. Did you consider either sort of having maybe a second objective that sort of minimized those that are traveling really far, or having like a hard constraint which said like people can't travel more than 30 kilometers or something? Because it looked like it was disadvantaging the areas that was more spread out.
Yeah. The answer is no, but again, we're looking for extensions, but at this moment we only look at let's say, the strict criterion within so many kilometers, 5, 4, you name it, and that's it, that's the one objective, yeah. And that's also because, the optimization problems are really hard. Yeah. And if you add extra objectives, it becomes harder and harder, yeah. Yeah. But my idea is maybe to put this also online, these type of problems, and to ask the community to come up with solutions for that.
Cool.
But so the honest answer is no.
Fair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inspirational talk. In the food program, what seems to be a very important issue are weather conditions, road conditions. How do you handle that in your model?
Yeah. So there's indeed also part of the input. And so if there is the rain season and the roads are not accessible, then of course then it's not possible to transport it via that. So we also include that type of information in the model.
In the sense available or not available.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your really great talk. I really admire the work that you do. You mentioned the possibility for industry partners, but what is the possibility for academics to contribute? Do you have like a platform where you advertise projects and people can contribute there, or what? Yeah, just what are the options?
Yeah, very good question. So, in fact, we started in January. And you know, the reactions are overwhelming. So there are so many people who would like to contribute. And so we also have to find our way how to do that and how to handle that. So we are now really focusing on help that is significant, like the DHL and so on. But for example, the ocean cleanup, I think I mentioned the name. The ocean cleanup is done by researchers from London Business School together, Jean Paufilet and Baisi Song. So we do have indeed also other researchers from other universities who are helping us with a certain type of projects. And again, the idea is maybe that we also put some concrete mathematical, I would say, problems on the website and ask people to find solutions for that. And if they are good solutions, then we can include it in our toolbox. Does that answer your question? Yes. Yeah?
Okay. So one more last question for Dick? Okay, if not, please join me to thank you, Dick, again once more time. Thank you very much.
Welcome.